Going to start constructing your toad house with a plan. I'm going to start with a big chunk of clay like this because our goal is to roll a shape that looks like this. So I want my clay to already be in somewhat of a rectangle shape. So I'm just going to get it prepared here. And then when I go to roll it, I'm going to keep my rolling pin going this way to have the clay spread out because it wasn't quite long enough. It's getting closer. Okay. Might go this way just a little. And I want it to be, I want it to stay fairly thick. I kind of think of those Subway cookies that they have. That would be a good thickness for this clay. How's that looking? It's kind of rough on the other side, so we'll roll it over. This still seems a little bit thick. If it gets too thin, it won't support the weight when you try to turn it into a cylinder. There we go. So now, that's plenty. I'm going to take this, and I like to use the wooden tools that have a nice point on it, and I'm going to do a really good job to get a clean cut line. There we go. Now at this point, I could stamp a surface texture into my clay. And if you look at this one, I stamped kind of a brick pattern, and then the roof, I just drew lines to make that look kind of like a straw roof. It also has a little sign above the door and a window. So I've got several different stamps, and they're going to look different when you're stamping them. This one looks like there's the brick stamp. This one's kind of a fun circle. And when I press, I need to be kind of careful because if I press too hard, it's going to make the clay thin, and then it won't stand up very well. So I'm pressing, kind of looks like stones now. And then the other thing I could do is go ahead and carve a door. And if you look at how big that is, once this turns into a cylinder, that door shape is going to be a little bigger than you're expecting when it bends on the cylinder. So I've got that. And I could even cart out a window right now. I could do that later too. So I'm going to bend it into a cylinder, and then I'm going to spend most of my time connecting the clay on the inside. So I'm actually rubbing the clay over itself so that that seam disappears. And then I'm going to carefully do it here because I did stamp the surface and I don't want to lose all those great pebbles. Okay, and let's just see how that door looks. So I'm also going to smooth this. If you see any big cracks, this is a great time to smooth those down. As you're working, you always want to think about quality and have everything just how you want it. Because once the clay hardens, you can't really do much. Okay, so that's pretty smooth. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. Now we're going to make the roof. And a roof shape, I have this circle, or some people like to put a leaf shape on their toad house. This one, it's glazed on the bottom there, but the roof, you can see that it has a leaf, and that's kind of a fun design too. So here I've got this big glob of clay, and since I'm rolling a circle now, I'm going to start with almost like a big hamburger patty of clay. So I am kind of helping myself out to get the basic shape before I start rolling. There we go. And then, this time I'll be rolling it both ways. Make sure it gets as big as my template. Oops. Bumped on my toad house. Here we go. I'm going to flip it over. And this was recycled clay, so it's a little bit rough looking, but all of that will go right back together. There we go. So, same thing. I'm going to cut this now. And I'll be very careful so I give a nice clean edge. That'll help make my roof look like quality. Okay. And then this line, if you wanted to try and cut it, you could lift that up. Okay, now same thing with this. If I wanted to stamp a design on it, this would be a great time to stamp it. I can always carve with that one. What I was doing was just drawing a line like this. If you want a deeper groove, some of these tools have some different designs at the end, and that can work to make kind of a groove. Anytime you see those little crumbs starting though, you want to kind of smooth those down. I could also do that once I have the roof made. So basically, to get that cylinder shape, I'm going to be bending it over itself like this. Cut this line. There we go. And then I need to attach this. I'm going to attach on the outside too. Okay. And then this is kind of the tricky spot, the tricky part, and that is to get the roof attached to the base. So, looks like there's something in the clay there. Okay. There we go. Still a little lumpy. One nice thing about adding texture to it is if you can't get the clay super smooth, then your texture will hide any of those flaws. Alright, so there's my cylinder, and I'm going to flip the whole thing upside down on my hand, and then I'm going to reach inside here and make sure that I smooth the clay onto itself. So I'm doing a really good job attaching inside here. Okay, I'm trying to keep that circle shape, trying to make sure it's the same thickness all the way around with the roof. And then I'm also going to take a tool, because it's kind of tricky in there, and I don't want to see that seam. I know it's attached if I have managed to erase the seam. So I'm going to go in here and just kind of go around. There we go. So now at this point I can be thinking about maybe carving those lines on my window. I also have some wire tools that might do a cool job of carving some lines, or you could do shingles if you wanted to draw like a shingle look. I could, if you change your mind, like I'm kind of changing my mind here because I was thinking of some other things I could do, I can just smooth this off and start over. I could also think about, I just got to smooth that edge too because it's getting a little bit rough. I could find something that's circular, like a marker or some other clay tools, and maybe I'll actually just stamp circles. Since I had those circle pebbles, that might look kind of neat. I'm going to take my time, make sure those all look like a nice circle shape. And then I could take some of these scraps, this one might work, and make a fireplace, or a chimney, I guess. So if I wanted to do that, I could cut this, make another smaller cylinder. I'll have to cut this off where it connects. But I could just make another cylinder and attach this on the roof for a chimney. If I want it, right now it would go off to the side if I put it on. Where's my door? So it would go off to the side, so if I want it to be sticking straight up, I actually need to cut this at an angle, like that, but I want it to be a circle. Whoops. So, there we go.